Welcome back to GCN Racing and highlights of stage 19 of La Vuelta a España. Yesterday was the penultimate day in the mountains and there was yet more success for the youngsters. 22-year-old Sergio Higuita taking his first pro win just 5 months after signing his first World Tour contract. Behind him the GC battle was as fierce as ever, and whilst there was no shaking Roglic out of his red jersey, Miguel Angel Lopez had done enough to prize the white jersey off the shoulders of Tadej Pogačar, who finished just under 1 minute behind him. That's how the GC now looks, Valverde up to second, Quintana down to third. Today didn't look too tough on paper, but once again the weather looked set to play its part. There was a small bump in the form of a third category climb at the start, but that was the only categorised hurdle of the day. There was, however, a nasty climb to the finish line, gradients reaching up to 12% in the last 700 metres, some of which was on cobbles. It didn't take long for the group to go clear after the neutral start this morning. 11 riders in total, here they are on the climb. Dillier, Novak, Cavagna, Craddock, Armirai, Grumet, O'Connor, De La Cruz, Arndt, Stettner and finally Shane Archibald. The weather had already taken a turn for the worse quite early on in the stage. Here you can see CCC already at the front of the bunch setting the pace and making sure that the gap didn't grow out too much. They were one of the teams who'd missed it, and with Bora and De Koning having representation in the breakaway, they weren't going to get much help in bringing it back. With 66 k's to go, we had a major crash, and it involved the race leader, Roglic, and a number of his teammates. It looked nasty, and unfortunately this resulted in Tony Martin abandoning the race. Lots of looking behind, the riders who'd got through it tried to establish who hadn't. It was some time in fact before Roglic would get back to his feet and back on his bike, and he'd have a hard old chase in front of him, mainly down to the fact that Movistar had chosen to accelerate at the front. Not normally the done thing, they almost single-handedly melted social media. Movistar were basically ripping up the unwritten rules and ripping up the race, which was in pieces. Also caught out was Miguel Angel Lopez. Good news for Roglic though, who was once again able to rely on Astana to do the chasing for him. The gap though over a minute between the two groups. And they still weren't holding back at the front. In fact, if anything, they were going even harder. Behind you can see the decimated peloton spread down the road. Roglic would eventually find more allies in other teams, all presumably equally unhappy at what Movistar were doing in front. Fast forward another couple of Ks and somebody at the team had come to their senses. They would never have lived that down if they'd continued to the finish. And so Roglic eventually was able to make his way back on, whilst Valverde was being given a stern telling off by Astana. He'll be on the naughty step later on tonight. And that slowing was good news too for the breakaway, whose lead started to go back in the right direction. They were down to 10 riders by this point, as Archibald had been called back to the bunch. 20 seconds had been shaved off by the time the peloton turned this corner with 37 k's to go, as they faced yet more crosswinds and another split in the bunch. This time all the major players apart from Roglic had safely made that front group. Up front, Cavagna could sense the danger of the bunch closing in on them behind and decided to go it alone. A bold move with 25k still remaining, most of it into a stiff headwind. But it was looking like a good decision. As he hit the outskirts of Toledo, he still maintained an advantage of over a minute. Behind, De Koning obviously weren't going to chase, but Lotto Soudal, CCC and Bora Hansgrohe were all doing their bit. Was it too little, too late though? They hadn't yet caught the rest of the breakaway, who was still sitting around 30 seconds behind the load leader. Nikias Arndt and Lawson Craddock using a small climb to make one final bid for stage victory. They were later joined by Groupama FDJ's Armirai, but with the gap holding steady at 30 seconds, it was going to take a monumental effort to catch Cavagna in front. Well, what a year it's been again for De Koning Quickstep. Cavagna spends the majority of his time working for others, as he has done at this very race, but it was incredible that he was still able to find the energy to do this today. On to the finishing climb and the cobblestones of Toledo, and Cavagna had it all but sewn up. One glance back on the finishing straight and he could see that despite the speeding group behind, he was about to take his first Grand Tour stage victory. And my word, didn't he deserve that. A 25k solo effort? Chapeau. Behind, a disappointed Sam Bennett would prove his strength on tough finishes by being best of the rest, but De Koning Quickstep proved their all-round strength by also finishing 3rd and 4th with Stibart and Gilbert respectively. A third pro win then for this 24-year-old, and as I said, his first in a Grand Tour, and for his team, that marked their 61st win of the season so far. There's your top 10. It was Valverde in 5th, a 3-second gap back to 6th with Tosh van der Sande, Turns, Pogačar, Lopez and Roglic rounding out the top 10. Well, it's another step closer to Madrid for this man, but another stressful stage. One more big one to come tomorrow, and this is how it stands going into it. He now has a 2 minute and 47 second advantage over Valverde, whilst the rest of the top 10 remains unchanged. Tomorrow, it's the final day in the mountains. It's a long one, and it's a tough one too. 190 Ks, 6 categorised climbs, and a summit finish at the Plataforma de Gredos. This really is the last chance for any changes in the GC, so we can expect, or at least hope, for fireworks. My prediction for the stage win is Miguel Angel Lopez. Come on, Miguel, you can do it, my son. See you tomorrow.